Orange is the new black is where we dive in. Every episode we'll discuss, even the scenes that made us cuss. So follow me, join the spree. I try to space with 2 E's. Spoilers everywhere, so be warned. Super fans, please come on board. Susie's special line and all these ideas, because we make it everything truly as it is.
Hello and welcome to Yadda Space. I'm Yadda and I'm so glad you're here. This is a rewatch podcast for the Netflix TV show Orange is the New Black. That means that there may be spoilers about things that happen in the future episodes, so please be warned. This is definitely a spoiler zone. On today's episode of our Orange is the New Black rewatch, we will be discussing Season 1, Episode 12, titled Fool Me Once. The IMDb synopsis for this episode says, after discovering a series of sad truths, friendships change. Tiffany, Pennsatucky Doggett, is offended by Piper Chapman, and that leads to dangerous roads. And Larry finally meets Piper after the radio show to discuss their future. We will also be getting the first of a few backstories from Tiffany, Pennsatucky Doggett. So this is the beginning of us getting to know her a little bit better. Spoiler alert, her being offended is not a good thing. We have Andrew McCarthy back again as the director of this episode. We've already seen his work directing the Chickening episode as well as the Scared Straight episode. In total, he's directed 15 episodes of Orange, including some iconic ones coming up, so we will definitely be seeing his work again. We have Sarah Hess once again as the head writer on this episode, and we've already seen her work in the Blood Donut episode. She's best known for her writing on the TV show House, but she's also a co-executive producer of Orange and has written 8 episodes of Orange in total, so we will be seeing her work again as well. And as I always say, I know that there's more than one person in a writer's room, so I'd like to give a shout out to the entire writing team. Thank you all for writing such a great show. You guys told the stories that were not being told, and for that, we thank you. IMDb rated this episode an 8.1, which is trending down from the last few episodes that we've seen, but you guys be the judge. As always, at the end of this pod, I will be giving my personal episode rating, but I encourage you guys to go ahead and write your episode ratings in the comments so that we can get an idea of what we the people think is actually the rating on this episode. Okay, so let's get into it. When the episode opens up, we are with Piper in the wee hours of the morning as she's starting her punishment janitorial duty. If we remember from last week's episode, Piper said that Caputo gave her janitorial duty as a punishment for getting Tiffany sent to SHU. So here she is, Piper is paying the piper. When she gets into the ladies' bathroom to start mopping the floors, she runs into Suzanne. It looks like it's their first time seeing each other since Larry's interview. When Piper notices that Suzanne is also mopping, she asks her, "Did you get in trouble too?" But Suzanne explains that sometimes the feelings inside of her get messy like dirt. And so she cleans things because in her mind, the dirt represents her feelings. So she cleans it to try to make herself feel better. Suzanne says, "This floor is my mind. That is called coping." Suzanne goes on to explain to Piper that the COs don't care if she cleans to calm herself down because they like things getting cleaned. Suzanne says, and that is called symbiosis. So symbiosis, let's make that our word of the day. Symbiosis. It's a noun found in biology, and it means the interaction between two different organisms living in close physical association, typically to the advantage of both. So in Suzanne's example, her cleaning the floors is a symbiotic relationship with the COs because she wants to clean the floors to keep her mind clear, and the COs want the floors clean because they want the floors clean. So in her example, you have two different organisms temporarily living in close physical association and temporarily advantaging both Suzanne as well as the COs. So that's when Piper approaches Suzanne about Larry's interview. Piper explains to Suzanne that the things that Larry was saying on the interview sounded a lot worse than what they really were, and that she told him those things before she really got to know Suzanne. Piper says that she told Larry those things before she knew what a nice person Suzanne was. But then she goes on to say, "But you have to admit, you come on a little strong." That's when Suzanne says, "It's okay, Dandelion. You know why? I used to spend a lot of time thinking how I could make you love me." And Piper tells her, "No, you're great the way you are." And that's when Suzanne says, I know, because the answer is, you're not a nice person. Turns out I'm not the problem here. It looks like it's you. Suzanne goes on to say, you're a mean person. And I used to think you were a yellow dandelion, but you're all dried up with a puff blown off. Damn, she's a weed. Suzanne tells Piper, and it's not your fault. You are who you are, like I am who I am. That's when Piper says, I'm not mean. Suzanne doesn't say anything. She just looks at Piper, dead-faced, like, really? I'm pretty sure you were mean to me. And so Piper says, I didn't mean to be mean to you. Suzanne ignores that. She doesn't want to hear any of it. Instead, she gives Piper some instructions on how she's cleaning, telling Piper that she needs to make sure that she's starting to mop from the inside out. Otherwise, she'll end up stepping on the clean, which is true. Good mopping tip. But Suzanne is not trying to hear any of Piper's apologies or her excuses. You were mean. I thought you were cool, but guess what? Looks like you're not. And that's okay. That's who you are. And I don't want to be associated with that. Shout out to you, Suzanne. Boundaries. And with that, Suzanne leaves the bathroom with Piper standing there looking dumb like, damn, did I just get roasted by Suzanne? Yeah, you kind of did. And she's not wrong. In the next scene, we see Piper leaving the bathroom and she runs into Alex saying, look at you waking up for your crack of dawn, I told you so. Alex is like, I have to pee. Ain't nobody here for you. But as long as I'm here, yeah, sure, let's rub it in a little bit. How is that spontaneous confession treating you? And Piper responds, shittier than I thought, which is impressive considering I'm literally scrubbing toilets. And that's when Alex asks Piper what's going on with her and Larry since the interview. And Piper basically says, you know, it's not good, but we're dealing. And then Piper mentions, oh yeah, he also told me that his father, aka my lawyer, looked at the records and found out that it was you who ratted me out to the feds. And Piper just lets that simmer. They stare at each other for a few seconds until Alex finally says, well, fuck. And we get our episode title from Piper when she says, don't worry about it. I mean, fool me once, right? Alex begins to try to apologize to Piper, but Piper insists, Alex, just stop. I'm over it. Really, it's fine. Piper gives Alex a little smile, a little kiss on the cheek, and Alex is looking at her very suspiciously like, okay, you're a little bit too cool about this. What's going on? I know I sure as hell wouldn't be cool about it. You got me sent to prison. In the next scene, we're in the cafeteria with Caputo as he's ordering a special meal from the kitchen. A little perk of being head guard, I guess. Elsewhere in the cafeteria, we see Sister Engels as she's trying to wrap up some food to save for later. When she turns to try to sneak it out of the cafeteria, she's stopped by CO Fischer, the new lady CO who Caputo has a crush on. And she tells Sister Engels, you know you're not supposed to take food out of here. And Caputo's watching the interaction from afar as Sister Engels is like, well, maybe we can bend the rule a little bit. You know, at my age, I got to keep my blood sugar steady, you know, trying to get a little sympathy, a little special treatment. And CO Fischer gives it to her. She ends up telling her, don't worry about it, gives her a little wink, and literally looks the other way. Ew. The special meal that Caputo ended up getting from the kitchen was an oatmeal and cheese sandwich with no crusts. Oatmeal and cheese? That sounds disgusting to me. I don't know. Let me not yuck your yum. Somebody else might like that out there. If you like oatmeal and cheese on a sandwich with no crust, let me know. But for me and my super picky self, no way. At another table in the cafeteria, we see Gloria telling Daya that she should eat something. You know, early pregnancy, it's hard to keep stuff down, so I understand Daya not wanting to eat right now. And as they're talking, Mendez is standing creepily by, just watching them. More specifically, watching Daya, to the point that when he finally comes over to her, he bends down and whispers in her ear, I like the shape of your ears. Like, ew. What a weird thing to say. And so when Daya doesn't respond, Gloria kicks her under the table like, girl, you better say something. You got a mission to do. Keep up the act. And so Daya turns on the flirting as she says to Mendez, so what else do you like the shape of? That must have been too hot for Mendez because he walked off after that one. Probably had to go gather himself. In the next scene, we are in Piper's bunk area with her and Miss Claudette as Piper stands up to try to apologize. Piper says to Miss Claudette, I want to apologize for everything that Larry said. I had no idea he was going to say that. And then Miss Claudette cuts her off saying, I know what they say about me, Chapman. I wish that you'd thought enough of me to ask for the truth. Piper starts to sniffle, and Miss Claudette tells her that she needs to keep her hands clean and stay on her side of the room. Miss Claudette says, tomorrow is a big day for me, and I won't have you ruin it. That seems to be a talent of yours. As she walks out of their dorm area, like drops the mic. Everybody got some fire for Piper today. Over in laundry, Leanne is noticing that Tiffany's been extra quiet since she got back from psych. But Tiffany says there ain't nothing worth saying. And so that's when Alex decides to poke the tiger that is Tiffany, as she says, and they say there's no such thing as miracles with regard to Tiffany being quiet all of a sudden, which I think is kind of an asolic thing to say. Asolic, my fake word that I made up years ago, meaning acting like an asshole. Asshole-like behavior. Asolic. Because it's not like Tiffany is just having a quiet day. She just got back from psych. She's been through some things, so let's maybe not make fun of that. Alex keeps poking Tiffany, but Tiffany does not respond, to the point that Leanne is like, why aren't you saying anything back to her? Tiffany simply says, because there ain't no point, Leanne, all right? I got beat. Ain't nobody up there looking out for me no more. Damn. Tiffany lost her faith? Leanne says, I'm looking out for you. Tiffany explains to Leanne that God came to her and told her that she was his girl. But that wasn't even true, because apparently his girl is Chapman, who Tiffany calls the bitch devil of Litchfield. But Alex won't let that stand. She goes, hey, Chapman put her ass on the line to get you out of psych, you know. Tiffany turns to Alex defeated and says, look, I ain't looking for revenge, okay? She'd probably kick my ass anyway. That's when Tiffany says to Leanne, do you know what that means when there ain't nobody up there punishing the evildoers? It means there ain't nobody giving out prizes for the good ones either. Because there ain't no judge. There ain't no justice. We just crawl around this earth like ants and then we die. Damn. Yeah, Tiffany has lost her religion completely. And so that transitions us to our first Tiffany backstory. This was a time when Tiffany was laying in bed with a guy, smoking cigarettes, looks like post-sex, they're half naked, and they're discussing if they're going to keep or not keep their child. The guy that's with her is telling her that, well, if they keep it, they can get on government assistance programs. That's when Tiffany finally says, I'm not keeping it, Arlen. So I guess that's the guy's name, Arlen. And he just grabs another cigarette and shakes his head saying, you never keep it. Damn. So that tells us right there that Tiffany's had multiple abortions. This is a pattern with her. And apparently one that he's disappointed by. So that's when Tiffany tells Arlen a story about how her cousin Sierra had a baby. And after the baby was born and she was drug tested, they found drugs in her system and ended up arresting the mom for endangering a minor. Tiffany goes on to say, so I think babies are cute and all, but I ain't going to jail for this fucker. Girl, you going to jail anyway. But okay. So I guess she's not willing to quit drugs for her baby either. Yeah, maybe she shouldn't have a baby. Her guy Arlen says to her, well, the other option is you could stop doing drugs. Like, maybe. They just stare at each other and let that process for a moment before they bust out laughing like, yeah, right. Stop drugs. Yeah, right. That's not happening. And so then Tiffany asks him for a ride to the clinic tomorrow to go have the abortion, but he tells her he's going to be busy tomorrow doing something with his tools. So apparently that's more important than helping Tiffany get to the clinic. Not great. And Tiffany looked clearly disappointed, but it also looked like a feeling that she's not new to, which makes me sad for her. Back at the prison, we see Piper in the kitchen trying to fix a toaster, and she's getting really frustrated when Alex comes in and starts hitting on her super hardcore. She's being extra flirty with her words. She comes over to Piper and is being extra flirty with her touching and groping and basically trying to get in Piper's pants. I don't think she buys Piper's whole, oh, it's okay that you named me, we're cool. Yeah, Alex is not buying that. So she's testing Piper. And Piper failed the test because as Alex is rubbing all on Piper, she's clearly very uncomfortable. And Piper starts asking Alex to stop, to the point that Piper pulls away from Alex saying, we are not okay. This is not fine. And Alex is looking at her like, I knew it. As she says, good. Now we can talk about it. Alex tells Piper, you are so full of shit. That's when Piper pushes Alex saying, fuck you. Fuck you, Alex. You want me to be angry? Well, guess what? I'm really fucking angry because I love you, Alex. I love you and I fucking hate you. Piper tells Alex, I've really been trying to keep my shit together, but if you need to see me Hulk out over this, and she doesn't finish the sentence, but she pushes Alex against the wall. And that's when Alex says to Piper, Larry left you, didn't he? And that's why you're fake fine with me. Right now, you're willing to overlook pretty much anything because ultimately, you were just terrified of being alone. Alex then gets in Piper's face saying, is that what I am to you? A fucking binky for you to suck on until you feel better? Piper can barely look at her. to the point where Alex tells her literally, look at me. And when Piper does, she says, why did you do it? And so Alex explains to Piper that they offered her a lot less time depending on how much she gave them. She goes on to tell Piper, I hadn't seen or heard from you in 8 years. Alex explains that at that point, Piper wasn't even like a real person to her anymore. And she even tells her that she was pretty sure that one of the other guys was going to end up giving Piper up anyways, so why not Alex get the credit for it? Alex then says, and if I'm being really honest, I was still pissed at you for leaving. For my mom. So yeah, at that moment, I was probably just like, yeah, fuck you, you know? Alex says, I'm not proud of myself. That's when Piper tells her, you lied to me. Piper's like, you could have given me this whole speech when I first saw you. And Alex just says, I wanted you to like me. I still do. I guess that's real. But Piper is cold-hearted and says to Alex, well, maybe you should have thought that all the way through, as she turns and walks away. That brings us to an outside of the prison scene with Larry and Piper's brother Cal. It looks like they're at Cal's trailer and they're drinking not coffee. Larry has a cup and he's like, this isn't even remotely coffee. To which Cal says, yeah, I know, it's dandelions. They're drinking dandelions? That's ironic. And Cal gives the audience the hot tip that apparently dandelions are full of potassium. So that's a little tip from Cal to us, I guess. Larry admits to Cal that maybe doing the interview the way that he did was a bit of a dick move, but he says it doesn't excuse Piper's cheating. And Cal says, cheating is a strong word, pal. Larry's like, I'm sorry. Is there another word for fucking someone other than the person that you promised in the very recent past to fuck exclusively forever? I don't think there's another word for that. But in Cal's mind, because the someone was a girl, he doesn't consider that cheating. Really, Cal? And that's when Larry has the realization and says, I think it might be over. And so that's when Cal basically tells Larry that he would very much like to be excluded from this narrative. He's like, I moved 110 miles away from civilization because I don't want to be in other people's drama, especially my sister's. So if you could like not keep me in the middle of this, that would be great. That's when Cal gets a text from his girlfriend, Neri, and it simply says, yes. He gets up and starts yelling in celebration to the point that Larry's like, everything okay? And Cal says simply, dude, I'm engaged. They got engaged over text. That brings us back to the prison, and Morello is standing in the doorway of the rec room plotting on Caputo. Caputo is in the rec room putting up flyers for the annual Christmas pageant. It says that there are going to be auditions in the chapel on Thursday, and all inmates are welcome to try out. I can't wait till we get to that scene. That's a fun scene. When Caputo finishes hanging up the sign, we see Morello giving Gloria a hand signal. When Gloria receives that, she puts down her playing cards and says, Mr. Caputo, I gotta make a complaint about the fungus in the Spanish showers. Caputo tries to blow Gloria off, telling her that she should go talk to another CO about it, but Gloria insists that she came to him because he's the only one that can handle it. He's the head guard. And it becomes clear pretty soon that Gloria is trying to stall Caputo with all of her stories about the bathrooms not being clean and her toe fungus issues, which probably aren't even true. It turns out that there are a few inmates in on this scheme. Morello is at the door, and it looks like beyond her is Gina standing at the storage room door, all while Gloria is keeping Caputo busy. Eventually, Gina starts cooing like a bird because I guess that's their signal. She gets Morello's attention, and Morello does another hand signal towards Gloria, who then just wraps up her rambling with Caputo saying, well, what are you gonna do, right? At least we got our sanity. And so Caputo turns to walk away when Morello comes up to him saying, Mr. Caputo, I think I heard somebody crying in the utility closet. And Caputo says, well, we can't have that, but like in an exasperated way, like, well, okay, thanks for telling me, but I really don't feel like dealing with this right now. So Morello goes on and says, I'm just saying because we had that suicide and you know how these girls are. They get an idea in their heads and if you don't watch out, they start offing themselves every time they get their period. And eventually he gives in, saying to Morello, if I'm not home in my massage chair holding a glass of wild turkey in 25 minutes, I am holding you personally responsible. Caputo's just trying to get home. He's like all of us at the end of a workday, like, I am not trying to be here any longer than I have to be. Please don't let this be something. When that scene cuts, we're in the storage room closet with Mendez and Daya. It looks like Mendez is having a great time as Daya is just going through the motions. And just as Mendez reaches his climax, Caputo opens the storage room closet door. And he says, oh, Christ on a cross. Looks like Mendez was literally caught with his pants down, which is horrible for him, but fantastic for Daya, because now they can put the plan in motion into saying that Mendez is the baby's father rather than Bennett. And they have the proof because Caputo has seen it with his own eyes. I guess nobody's going to fact check the pregnancy timeline, so I guess the storyline works. Back over in Piper and Miss Claudette's bunk, we hear Miss Claudette telling Piper that it seems like the judge is leaning in her direction and that they're going to find out the results of her case this afternoon. And so Piper offers Miss Claudette an olive, as Morello would say, or an olive branch for the rest of us here, as Piper grabs her nail polish and starts to do Miss Claudette's nails for her big day. Piper asks Miss Claudette what's her plan when she gets out. And so Miss Claudette tells Piper, I have someone waiting for me. And that's all the plan I need. And I'm also going to eat some dinner at dinner time at 7 o'clock, like a person. That's nice. Miss Claudette is looking forward to some normalcy. The next thing that we see is Janae walking to the rec room and noticing a sign on the door that says that yoga is canceled for today and probably tomorrow as well. So she looks disappointed about that. We'll find out more about what that's all about later. Over in Caputo's office, Fig is there and she is ripping into Caputo saying, an armadillo could run this place better than you. I swear to God. Caputo says, I can't be everywhere. You can't blame me for the scumbag deciding last night was his go time to start raping people. And that's when Fig says, whoa, 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 we are not talking about a rape here. We are not using the R word. Caputo says, a CO fucks an inmate against her will. Like, what else are we supposed to call it? Fig says, well, did she scream? Was she crying? These girls throwing themselves at COs thinking they can get out of here and snag a government pension. Caputo stops her there and says, read the rules, Fig. The girl can't give consent even if she wants to. But Fig insists, saying, listen to me. We are not putting rape on the record right now. Fig goes on to say, Mendez is going to take a little leave without pay. The stress of the job is getting to him, etc., etc., etc. Fig says, frankly, we could use the money. The budget is shot to hell. We'll stick a pin in that one. Fig tells Caputo, I am going to sell this to the warden as a plus. Rape. A good thing. Okay, Fig. This is probably why I didn't like her early on. I remember this Fig. The Fig that did not stand up for the women. The Fig that tried to victim blame. Although she's not wrong in this particular case, but still, I was not impressed with Fig at the beginning in previous watches. Fig leaves Caputo's office saying, it's getting a little old cleaning up your messes, Joe. Elsewhere in the prison, we're outside with Daya as Bennett walks up to her asking, what the hell happened last night? Are you okay? Should you even be working right now? Daya insists that she's fine. And now he's fine too. Daya says now, when they find out I got a baby in me, it ain't gonna come down on you. And that's when Bennett realizes what's happened. He says, oh my God, you did this on purpose? Daya says, because I love you. I did it for us. Bennett's like, for us? You fucked Mendez? And you lied? You got him suspended without pay. And to that, Daya says, suspended? They ain't fired that fucknut? He raped me. Bennett says, he didn't rape you. You framed him. Daya's like, yeah, but as far as they know. And Bennett is looking at her like, I cannot believe you. His face says, I cannot believe that this is the person that I was falling for. How could you do something like this to someone? He looks like he's really starting to regret his choices here. Eventually, he says to Daya, who are you? Before he walks away. And that is the beginning of the end of the Daya that we know. All the way back here in season 1. Over in the visitation room, we're with Tiffany as she sits across from a man, asking him if Leanne called him to come check on her. And he's like, yeah, she's worried about you. She says that you haven't been yourself. Tiffany tells him she's probably right. I'm still trying to get from under the meds that they gave me. And you want to know why? Because if you so much as squawk about God in here, you'll get thrown in with the Looney Tunes. And so Tiffany tells this guy that Chapman made her believe that God chose her. Tiffany says, but he didn't. They all disrespected me. And he didn't do nothing. He let them laugh at me. Conclusion being that I don't think he exists at all. And if he does, he ain't a person I want to know. And so the guy Tiffany's with leans forward and says, Matthew chapter 5, verse 11, blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you and shall speak all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. He hasn't abandoned you, Tiffany. Maybe he just wants you to notice someone who needs him. But Tiffany says she don't need him, okay? And the guy says, people hurt other people because they're unhappy, because they feel guilty over the things that they've done and they have no one to forgive them. That's when Tiffany tells him, well, you might as well tell me to turn into a duck, which we should stick a pin in. That line is going to come back. But anyways, Tiffany says, you might as well tell me to turn into a duck because I ain't forgiven her. Which, is that a phrase? I don't know that phrase. Turn into a duck because I'm not forgiving her? Does that make sense, or is that one of those Tiffany idioms? Tiffany goes on to say, I mean, I have to confess that to you right now. I'm not that big. I know they say when they go low, you go high, but I don't think I can go high. I'm not that big. The guy insists, God wants you to be that big. He chose you to be a hero. Remember how you yourself have been forgiven. Which transitions us to another Tiffany flashback to the day when she got probably her most recent abortion. And it looks like she's just waking up from surgery when the nurse walks in saying to her, number 5, huh? We should give you a punch card. Get the 6th one free. And then she walks out of the room. How rude. I don't think that excuses what Tiffany's about to do, but that lady was rude, absolutely uncalled for. And I can totally understand Tiffany's feeling here. She felt disrespected because she was. As Tiffany is leaving the women's clinic, we can see a sign out front that lets us know that we're in Fishersville, Virginia, which, yes, I had to look it up on the map because I needed to know. So Fishersville, in case you also need to know, is located really close to the Virginia and West Virginia border. And it's also located about 10 minutes from Waynesboro, Virginia, which is kind of interesting to me because we know from a prior episode that Tiffany is from Waynesboro. I'm Tiffany. I'm from Waynesboro. But because her name is Pennsatucky, I always assumed that she was from Pennsylvania. But no, it looks like she's from Virginia. Or maybe this is just a coincidence, but I thought that's a pretty interesting coincidence, if it's just a coincidence. Anyways, back to Tiffany leaving the women's clinic. As Tiffany's walking outside of the clinic, we notice that there's a bunch of anti-abortion protesters outside. But Tiffany walks right on past them. They don't bother her. When Tiffany gets to the car, she grabs a gun out of the back seat, and the guy who's in there waiting for her says, best not waste my squirrel bullets. To which Tiffany simply says, she disrespected me, as she slams the car door and cocks the gun. When she walks back into the clinic, we hear one shot and the scene cuts. So that's why Tiffany's in prison. She's in prison because somebody disrespected her, and the way that she thought to deal with that was to go back in and shoot her. Hopefully not dead. So Tiffany clearly has some triggers and some emotional regulation problems that she should probably be dealing with, but she hasn't as of yet. And so she's officially made the bad choice, which lands her in prison and down a pretty tough path. Back at the prison, we are in Caputo's office and we see him watering a little mini Christmas tree, which I think is a really cute detail because I remember later on when he gets a different office, no spoilers there, and he starts decorating it with his plants, and he's very much about his plants and spritzing them and watering them. So I think it's kind of cute to see that they've started that aspect of his character development way back here. But anyways, back to the point. He's in his office watering his little mini Christmas tree and talking to CO Fischer, the one he has a crush on. He says to her, I assume you heard about Mendez? And she says, yeah, I heard he was fraternizing, sir. And Caputo's like, fraternizing? Fischer, I have seen some things that I cannot unsee. Caputo then goes on to tell Fischer, what I need from you is to not get yourself in trouble the way that Mendez did. To which Fischer says, well, I'm not gay, sir. And Caputo starts laughing, saying, no, I didn't mean that. You know, you're as straight as they come. He then clarifies to say, what I mean is you can't go easy on the inmates. They'll take advantage of you. By the way, I saw you yesterday look the other way when the nun moved a contraband muffin. Caputo goes on to say, these women are criminals, and even the cuddly looking ones have done some shit that would terrify a kind-hearted person such as yourself. He then gets serious with her and says, Fischer, you need to get on your game. You maintain your authority. You remind them who's in charge. And if you want, I can help you out. I can be your mentor or something. So Fischer says, well, do you think it would help if I use a deeper voice like, move along, sister? And Caputo says, yeah, maybe. But it will also help if you don't use their names. Just say inmate, like they're all the same to you. It reminds them that they're not really people. Damn, Caputo. See this? Again, I'm really glad to see his growth later because this early Caputo, very disappointing. CO Fischer says, but they are people. Exactly, girl. They are. Caputo turns on his Christmas tree and then turns back to CO Fischer saying, you can't think that way. They are sheep. We feed them. We herd them from one room to the next. They're not like you. You're a woman. He then goes on to say, and I'm a man, which is totally creepy. And CO Fischer is looking at him like, okay, this just went weird, as the scene cuts. The next thing that we see is Mendez leaving the prison holding his box of things, looking like he's about to go on his administrative leave. As he's walking past Red taking in the food truck deliveries, he stops. They take a moment to look at each other, and Red gives him a little wink, like, yep, that was me. I orchestrated that. Set you up, got you out. Now deal with that. Again, Red is not to be messed with. So in the next scene, we're back at Cal's camper, and him and his new fiancée, Neri, are having an argument with Larry present. So once the argument is over, Neri storms out, and Larry says, well, that was awkward. And Cal's like, no, that's not awkward. That's foreplay, man. That's how we relate. Cal then begins to explain to Larry about how he grew up with his dad out gallivanting with different women and his mother at home numbing the pain with alcohol and barely eating. Cal then goes on to say, but with Neri, we put everything out there, man. It's safe. You know, we scream and we throw shit. It's like electric. And while they're lighting it up to be some kind of a sex thing, I personally think, you know, as someone with a 20 plus year relationship under my belt, I think I can say that we learned pretty early on that you need to just have those arguments. You need to just be real, lay it all out. Don't not say things, because if you don't say things, those things turn into resentment. So yeah, there is some truth to what Cal is saying. Having the argument can be low-key kind of healthy for the relationship. It's good for communication. Of course, with that, you have to be careful and learn to fight fair. There are some things that you cannot unsay. But in general, if you're not being an asshole and you have some sort of rules to the way that you argue, it'll be just fine. Lay it out there. Have the discussion. Even if it means it's going to get a little loud. Back at the prison, we're in the TV room with Yoga Jones as she's hanging holiday decorations. That's when Janae comes in to try to fix the VCR. Janae says, I came by Yoga today. And Yoga Jones tells her, well, yeah, I'm taking a little break. She goes on to tell Janae, you can only take so much Zen. Sometimes you want to feel something. That's when Janae gets serious with Yoga Jones and says, you got to talk about it sometime. And so this is the only place where we get any kind of backstory for Yoga Jones. Unfortunately, we don't get to see her original crime or any of her backstory about her life before prison, but she does tell Janae about her original crime here. Yoga Jones tells Janae about how she used to grow marijuana out on her property in California. She shares that she was growing the marijuana mostly for selling to keep a roof over her head, but she did smoke it occasionally, although mostly she says she was an alcoholic like her parents raised her to be. So Yoga Jones goes on to tell Janae about the night when it happened. She says that she stayed up all night with a gun hoping to catch the deer who were constantly eating her marijuana plants. And so on this particular night, she could have sworn that she saw them at the edge of her property. Unfortunately, she was drunk that night, as she was most nights. And so she took out her gun to shoot what she thought was the deer, but it turns out it wasn't a deer at all. It was actually an 8-year-old kid from next door who was running away from home because his dad took away his Nintendo, which is absolutely heartbreaking. And she's struggling to even get the words out. She's clearly distraught by this still. And the fact that the dad took away the kid's Nintendo kind of dates this way back to at least the 90s. So this has been a long time that she's had to process this, and it still gets her upset. And so as the two of them are having this very emotional moment connecting about this horrible thing that Yoga Jones has done, CO Fischer comes in the room trying to do what Caputo told her to do, which was to stop going easy on the inmates. So she comes in with her little deep voice talking about work hours means no socializing whatsoever, inmates, you know, trying to be tough, but it's not the time. And Yoga Jones turns to her completely distraught, tears in her eyes, saying it was a mistake. And Janae tells CO Fischer, we're having a moment here. And so Fischer retreats. She says, shit, I'm sorry, carry on. She tried to be tough, but she still got her humanity. And I personally think that's a good thing. In the next scene, we are in the recreation room with Black Cindy and Poussey. They are sitting at a table talking about Kwanzaa. Poussey is telling Cindy about how she doesn't really know what Kwanzaa is anyway. And Cindy's like, it doesn't matter because they're taking Fed money at this prison. They have to give equal time to all traditions. As they're sitting there making what I guess they're considering Kwanzaa decorations. They're They're making a paper chain with pieces of red, black, and green construction paper, which I don't think is a Kwanzaa decoration. As someone who actually did celebrate Kwanzaa growing up, my mom sent me to a Saturday school where they taught all about Black culture, both African as well as African American. So I know very much about Kwanzaa. And as a kid, I hated going there. But as an adult, I'm very, very glad that my mom sent me there. And I kind of wish that I had some place like that to send my son these days. But at any rate, 8-year-old me will be shocked to know that I teach my son about Kwanzaa. But I digress. Back in the rec room with Cindy and Poussey, Cindy says, you know what? I think I'm going to need a traditional week off to honor my African roots. You feel me? Cindy always trying to find a little loophole to get some special treatment. That's a little bit of foreshadowing to some other things she gets into later. Always looking for a loophole. When Tiffany walks in the room, she walks directly over to Piper, who is sitting with Sister Ingalls, and she says to her, hey, college, I got words for you. And she walks away. Piper's left sitting there like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to follow you. So she does, and she goes to sit down at a table with Tiffany. Tiffany says, all right, I'm just going to give it to you straight, college. I've been harboring some really bad hate in my heart for you. And Piper's like, but I saved you. I got you out of psych. And Tiffany rightfully says, you saved me from some shit you got me into. So don't be surprised if there's not a national holiday declared in your name. Like, girl, I don't care. That was your fault anyway. That's when Piper rightfully says, well, hey, you got me thrown into this shoe. But Tiffany interrupts her and says, hey, who's talking right now? Tiffany is another one that's unintentionally funny. Her delivery is great. Tiffany goes on and says to Piper, do you realize that you almost ruined my life? You made the almighty God into a joke. What do you believe in? And Piper hems and haws, and then she eventually says that she feels like maybe she's a spiritual humanist. And Tiffany cuts her off saying, all right, just stop. You're not religious, okay? Stop. Tiffany continues and asks Piper, do you believe in Hussein Obama, electric cars, and Shakespeare books? And do you go out to eat at restaurants? Well, guess what? I don't have any of that, okay? All I have is him. And she points up to indicate that she means God. Piper's like, well, I'm sorry. Tiffany tells her, don't ask my forgiveness. You should ask for his forgiveness. You need to get right with him, and then we'll see that this was all part of his plan. And then we don't have to fight anymore. Piper says, I wasn't planning on fighting with you. And Tiffany says, all right, well, then just do it. Apologize to him right here, right now. You got somewhere to be? And so Piper looks around like, okay, I guess we're doing this. And so Piper starts with Dear Jesus. And Tiffany cuts her off right away saying, well, that's awfully familiar for somebody that don't give him the time of day. Don't be talking to him like you know him. You don't know Jesus on a first name basis. And so Piper tries again saying, okay, so dear Mr. Christ. And Tiffany nods. She approves. And so Piper says a little prayer talking about how she's done some things recently that she's not proud of. Some things recently that have not been up to his standards. And she's feeling pretty ashamed. Piper continues and says, you know, it's easy to point fingers, but she's done some things lately that she feels pretty lousy about. And so Piper continues and says, so if I could be forgiven, that would be really comforting. Ending with amen. Tiffany approves and tells Piper, I think you took a step on the right road, before she gets up and gives her a great big hug. When Tiffany finishes hugging Piper, she tells her, now we just got to get you baptized, before she happily walks away. And Piper's left there looking like, baptized? What? In a bar across town, we're with Bennett and Mendez as they recap what's happened with Daya. Mendez tells Bennett, it's not what it sounds like. She wanted me to do it. And Bennett looks like that just irritates him to the core. Mendez continues and says, Benny, I think we're in love. Bennett just rolls his eyes and says, you poor fucker. Because Bennett knows that Mendez is getting played, but Mendez has absolutely no clue, and he's actually falling for Daya. Mendez tells Bennett that he has to get Daya a message. He pulls a piece of paper out of his pocket and passes it to Bennett, asking him to deliver it to Daya. But Bennett's like, no, I can get in deep shit for that. And plus, it's not good for you, man. It's not healthy. You need a girl you can actually be with. And as those words came out of his mouth, he looks almost like he's processing it for himself as well. Like, dude, you need a girl that you can be with for real as well. That's when Mendez says, I'm going to help you out, Benny. And Mendez proceeds to tell Bennett that there's a shipment coming in tomorrow from Neptune's Produce. Mendez tells Bennett to stop the truck and get into it before they unload it. Look for a box with a check mark on the side. But Bennett's like, I don't want to get into anything weird. To which Mendez says, it's not weird, it's drugs. Like, grow up. Mendez then goes on to lie and tell Bennett that Sputnik in the kitchen is dealing to the inmates. So he's pinning the drugs on Red. Mendez says that Red is turning them into addicts, and it's wrong. Look at him up on his high horse. Mendez tells Bennett that if he gets that box to Caputo, he's going to be very grateful. So Mendez probably feels like he's helping Bennett to do something good for his career, and at the same time trying to take down Red. Mendez is really trying to be seen as the good guy here because he's laying it on thick, telling Bennett, I was going to be the hero, but, I'm going to give you my win, man. You got this one. It's your win now. And Bennett's like, why? Mendez simply says, satisfaction. Seems like he's doing this purely out of spite to take Red down. Mendez again asks Bennett to take the note to Daya. And this time Bennett actually takes it, but at the same time he tells Mendez, I'm not saying yes. Mendez gets up on his way to leave and says, but you will, because you're my brother. Brother in arms, they're not actually related. When Mendez leaves the bar, Bennett opens up the note to Daya to reveal that it says, wait for me. So Mendez is all in on Daya. He is in love, and he is trying to build something real with Daya. After Bennett reads the note, he crumples it up, throws it, and says, fuck. When we get back to the prison, Piper is approaching Alex's bed telling her, you were right about Larry. I think it's over. Piper takes a seat next to Alex and tells her, all of my cards are on the table. I'm an emotionally abusive narcissist who bailed on you when your mother died. I mean, yeah, you did. I'm actually not so sure if Piper is an emotionally manipulative narcissist. I feel like she's being a little bit hard on herself there, but she definitely did bail on Alex when her mom died, which was really fucked up. Alex then lays her cards on the table saying, and I'm a ruthless pragmatist who sold you out and then lied about it. We suck. Yeah, y'all kind of do. But maybe that means y'all are meant for each other. Who knows? Maybe in your twisted relationship world, it works. Piper says to Alex, I have ruined my life now twice over you. So what's the end game here? When we get out of prison, what's the plan? Piper goes on and says, one thing that I do know is that I am never, ever coming back to prison. That sounds like a good goal to have, Piper, and a good boundary to set with Alex, who does not know what she's going to do when she gets out of here. She basically tells Piper that her only skill is moving large amounts of heroin. So I think Piper was right to draw that boundary like, girl, okay, but like, I'm not doing that with you this time. You messed up my life twice already. We're not going for number 3. And Alex basically tells Piper, you have free will. You don't have to be with me. If you want to do the regular thing and go nest, that's fine. Go do that. But if you want some adventure in your life, then I'm your girl. And Alex grabs Piper's hand as Piper is sitting there looking like, I think I'm going to choose adventure. That's when Nikki comes over to them asking Piper if she's seen her roommate, Miss Claudette, because apparently she's back from her trial. Lorna drove her back. Nikki tells Piper that Miss Claudette's appeal went kaput, and adds that Piper better sleep with both eyes open tonight before she walks away. The next thing that we see is a completely stoic Miss Claudette walking down the prison halls. She has a blank yet troubled look on her face. As she's about to pass CO Fischer, she stops her saying, inmate, where's your badge? But Miss Claudette completely ignores her, continues walking straight forward, to the point that CO Fischer says, inmate, I'm talking to you. Miss Claudette continues walking straight forward. CO Fischer continues to push, telling Miss Claudette that her nail polish is non-regulation as well. Where did she get that? That's when Miss Claudette stops, and CO Fischer gets directly in her face, yelling again, where did you get that? And it was at that point that Miss Claudette snapped. She yokes CO Fischer up by her neck, choking her up against the wall. She does not look like she's willing to stop at all. It's not until CO O'Neill comes up behind her and knocks her to the ground does she even let go of CO Fischer's neck. CO O'Neill tells her that she's going to Max, and Miss Claudette simply says, doesn't matter. It looks like she's lost absolutely all of her hope. It's really sad to see her go out like this. As CO O'Neill escorts Miss Claudette down to Max, we see a group of women watching her go. Nikki's there, Piper's there, Alex is there. And then we see Taystee pop up behind Piper in orange saying, what are we looking at? Everyone turns to look at her saying, Taystee? Like, what are you doing here? Yeah, girl, what are you doing here? Taystee's back in prison, y'all. Great for those of us who love to see Taystee, but horrible for her and her life. But we'll get there. In the next scene, we're back at Piper's bunk. Black Cindy tells Piper, if you put your hand on a guard, You go to Max and you don't come back. Everybody knows that. So Cindy takes Miss Claudette's picture of Denzel Washington, and Boo takes her hot pot and a few other things, except when Boo goes to grab Miss Claudette's blanket, Piper stops her and says, hey, I get that. I was her roommate, I took her shit, and I listened to her snore. The blanket is mine. Okay, girl, stand your ground. In the next scene, we see Poussey walking past the library when she notices Taystee in there sorting books. Poussey looks like she cannot believe her eyes. Like, what are you doing here? Poussey walks into the library and says to Taystee, do you want to talk about it? To which Taystee says, not really. But then she ends up telling Poussey, what they don't tell you when you get out, they're going to be up your ass like the KGB. Curfew every night, piss in a cup whenever they say. You got to do 3 job interviews in a week for jobs you ain't never going to get. Probation officer calling every minute, checking up. Man, at least in jail you get dinner. Damn. And then Taystee turns around like a disappointed little kid. Poussey walks up behind her and slaps her upside the head. And then she says, man, where do you think you at, Paris Hilton? There's bitches in here doing 15 years for letting their boyfriends do deals in the kitchen because they were afraid of getting beat if they said no. And there's bitches in here that ain't seen their kids since they was babies. And them kids got their own babies now. Or they're running around the street carrying guns and shit with no one watching over them. Poussey goes on to tell Taystee, yo, I've been in here 2 years and I got 4 more. God damn, she got 6 years off of some weed? That's crazy. Anyways, we'll get there. So Poussey says, I've been in here 2 years and I got 4 more. And 8 months ago, when I was waxing fucking floors in the cafeteria, my mom's passed. And that's when Taystee looks at Poussey like that's brand new information to her. Did Taystee not know that Poussey's mom died? That's wild. I really would have assumed that Taystee would have known that. So as Poussey is talking about the day that she found out that her mom died, she continues and tells Taystee, I wasn't even there to say the shit that you're supposed to say to your mom before she's gone. So I know you ain't telling me in my face right now that you walked back into this place because freedom was too inconvenient for you? That's when Taystee turns to Poussey and says, it ain't like that, P. Minimum wage is some kind of joke. Taystee shares that she got a part-time job working at Pizza Hut, but she still owed the prison $900 in fees that she's got to pay back somehow. She doesn't even have a place to stay. Taystee tells Poussey that she was staying with her cousin at her apartment, sleeping on the floor like a dog. Her cousin had other people staying with her, and one of those people stole Taystee's check. She even got lice stain over there. Taystee goes on and tells Poussey, everyone I know is poor, in jail, or gone. Damn. And so Taystee tells Poussey, I know how to play it here. I know where to be, what rules to follow. I got a bed here. And I've got you. That's when Poussey says, I really missed you. And Taystee, with tears in her eyes, gives Poussey a great big hug and tells her, I didn't mean to let you down. That's when Poussey asks Taystee, so what'd you do to land yourself back in here? And Taystee says, well, first, I got a can of Rockstar and 100 paper clips. And she starts laughing. I don't know where that story is going. If any of you know what that means, you can let me know in the comments because I don't know. But she got into some mess with Rockstar and paper clips, and that's what got her back here. The next thing that we see is Piper walking down the hallway, opening up her mail, and she's got a picture of a baby. I'm guessing Polly's baby. And Piper kind of smiles to herself before Tiffany stops her saying, you ready to get dunked? Because remember, Tiffany is trying to baptize Piper, but I don't think she consented to that. And Piper says as much to Tiffany, saying, oh God, the baptism thing, you were serious? And Tiffany says, well, what about me makes you think I wouldn't be serious? Like, why are you not taking me seriously? Am I some kind of joke to you? Piper says, good point. And so Piper tries to make an excuse about why she can't go to the baptism. She tells Tiffany that she's got Larry coming today, or at least she hopes that he's coming today. But Tiffany's like, just go after. This takes a few minutes, and that's not a lot of time to get your ticket to the kingdom of heaven, which is forever and ever. Amen. And as she says amen, the lights in the prison literally start to flicker. And Tiffany looks up and says, wow, that was a sign. I think he's back on my side. Which leads us into another Tiffany flashback. This time, we are with Tiffany on one of her court days for her case for shooting the nurse at the abortion clinic. And this is actually the day when Tiffany meets her lawyer, who now we know that was who Tiffany was talking to in the visitation room earlier. In this backstory scene, he's being introduced to her. This is where we find out that the firm he works for is a Christian firm, And so Tiffany asks her lawyer, are you going to get me out of jail? And he says, well, if you shoot somebody in broad daylight with witnesses, you're going to do some time. That's a fact. But I will see that you do less time. That's when he tells Tiffany that they're going to argue that she did what she did based on the moral conviction that she was saving lives. So that's the story. She was doing this as an anti-abortion person, saving Christian babies. Tiffany starts to tell him that that's not why she did it, but he doesn't want to hear it. He's like, shh, I don't want to hear that. So then Tiffany says, well, I can't afford you. But he tells her that his fees have already been taken care of. And there's even a small monthly stipend that's going to go to her family to help them out while she's in prison. And Tiffany's like, how? How is this being paid for? Her lawyer responds, by the grace of God. And he pauses for dramatic effect before saying, and also, all of your friends, as he opens up the courtroom door, showing Tiffany that she's got a whole bunch of Christian supporters behind her. A huge group of anti-abortion people have flooded the courtroom in support for Tiffany. They have signs in there that say, we heart Tiffany, Tiffany for president, God bless Tiffany, Tiffany is innocent. So she's got fans, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. They're paying for her lawyer, and they're paying to support her family. So yeah, I think it's kind of easy to understand how Tiffany got to where she is with regard to religion. As she stands in that courtroom with those people behind her supporting her, she looks so proud, smiling more and more as the camera zooms in on her. We hear these Christian organs playing in the background, which helps to paint the picture of Tiffany in this saint-like position. That brings us right back to the conversation that we came from between Tiffany and Piper, where Tiffany is trying to convince Piper to come get baptized. Tiffany says to Piper, college, don't let me down. So Piper finally says, fine, I have 10 minutes. Tiffany says perfect, grabs Piper by the hand, and they run off to go get baptized. Over in Caputo's office, we see him and Bennett standing over a bag full of pills, which I'm assuming are drugs, as Caputo tells Bennett, I really fucking needed this. This is the kind of thing I remember when it's time to move somebody up the ladder. Caputo then goes on to say that kitchen commie cunt is finally going down, as he kisses Bennett literally on the lips. That's inappropriate. And also, why the hate for Red? Over in another office, we see Red standing at Mr. Healy's desk. It looks like she's having a marriage counseling session with Mr. Healy and his wife. Red is translating for Mr. Healy's wife, and so she tells him that she's saying that she's bored. She wants to be taken out more. But Mr. Healy quickly says, well, maybe I would take her out more if she didn't flirt with other men. So Red asks her, have you been acting like a slut? The wife says, I have a body. I can't help it if people look. Girl, okay, but are you entertaining them? That's the question. Mr. Healy tells Red all he wants is a nice, quiet life. Is that too much to ask? So when Red translates that for his wife, she also adds on, he's got a government job, dummy. It could be much worse. That's when Bennett comes into the office, telling Red, Caputo wants to see you. Red immediately says, I'm busy. But Bennett tells her, I'd go now if I were you. And as Red looks over at Bennett, we can see her processing until she realizes and says, that little bitch Mendez. So she knows that Mendez got her caught up in some mess. Before Red goes to see Caputo, she tells Mr. Healy, if it goes bad, please take care of my girls. What a good prison mom. She's not afraid of taking accountability for her mess, but she also wants to make sure that her prison family is protected. Top tier prison mom. When that scene cuts, we're over in the laundry room with Tiffany as she's about to give Piper her baptism. Tiffany tells Piper, as you know, we do not have a river to dunk you in, but we cleaned out the muck sink. And so, yeah, you might just want to take off your shirt. And I know Tiffany said she cleaned it, but when Piper looks over at the sink, it still looks pretty gross. I wouldn't want to get in there. That's when Piper says, okay, nope. See, I can't do this. I'm sorry. I really want us to get along. I do, but I can't pretend to believe something that I don't. And I don't. I believe in science. I believe in evolution. I cannot get behind some supreme being who weighs in on the Tony Awards while a million people get whacked with machetes. I don't believe a billion Indians are going to hell. I don't think we get cancer to learn life lessons. And I don't believe that people die young because God needs another angel. I think it's just bullshit. And on some level, I think we all know that. And Piper's little speech has other people in the room questioning their own beliefs. Even Leanne says the angels thing is a little bit hard to get behind. And Tiffany says to her, I thought you were a Christian. Leanne says, I am, but you know. I have some questions. It's okay to question. Piper continues and tells Tiffany, look, I understand that religion makes it easier to deal with all the random shitty things that happen to us. And I wish I could get on that ride. I'm sure I would be happier, but I can't. Feelings are not enough. I need it to be real. And with that, Piper says, I gotta go. Tiffany tells her, I tried to be your friend. Piper just says, I hope he makes you very happy, as she walks away. When that scene cuts, we're with Natalie Figueroa as she's leaving the prison and her phone rings. When Fig picks up her phone, we find out that it's Andrew Nance, a journalist who heard Larry's interview and now wants to ask Fig some questions about what's going on at the prison. Andrew, the journalist, is trying to find out from Fig what's going on with the budget over at Litchfield, since Larry was talking all about how the GED program got shut down, how the track got shut down. Like, what's going on over there? What's up with the budget, lady? Fig tells him that they do the best with what they've got, but, there's always a bottom line. Actually, Litchfield has gotten an increase in their budget over the last 5 years to the tune of $2.3 million. And looking at the conditions that we've seen in this prison, it's certainly not being spent there. So Andrew, the journalist, asks Fig, where did all that money go? And Fig looks like she's caught. She literally grabs onto the side of the car to catch her balance as she says, I'll have to look into that. As she hangs up on him, when the camera pans out a little bit, we see that the car she's about to enter, her car, is a Mercedes. Everybody else working in the prison seems like they're living paycheck to paycheck, but Fig is over here driving a Mercedes. That's interesting, considering the budget discrepancies, but we'll get there. Elsewhere in the prison, we are at visitation with Piper, and yep, Larry showed up. They're sitting at the table across from each other very awkwardly. When Larry finally says, listen, neither of us understood how crazy this was going to be. We thought, oh, sure, we'll get married after, like we were just going to pick up where we left off. But Piper, this is changing you. It's changing me. It's messy and weird. And so Larry basically tells Piper that this whole thing is messy, and either they can choose to be messy and do this thing together, get married right now and do this as husband and wife, or they have to break up. Larry is telling Piper that anything less than a for sure yes or a for sure no, he can't do. He's basically done being in limbo. Piper's looking at him with tears in her eyes, almost in disbelief, as he asks her, so, what do you say? And they cut the scene right there. We do not get to know what Piper says. The next thing that we hear is Tiffany saying, you know what I gotta do. And we're back in the laundry room with her as she's telling her little minions, she disrespected me. Talking about Piper. And if we know Tiffany, we know that phrase, she disrespected me. Those are Tiffany's fighting words. Tiffany goes on to say, completely serious. So now I'm going to have to kill her as we go to our orange screen indicating the end of the episode. I can't believe they left us on that ending. Actually, I can. Being that this is the last episode before the finale of the first season, I think it's absolutely appropriate to leave us on such a cliffhanger. Because if you're watching this in real time, you were for sure going to continue on to the next episode. And if you're watching it on a rewatch, you probably are as well. Which is why I have a little surprise for you at the end of this episode, so stay tuned for that. As a reminder, IMDb rated this episode an 8.1. Let me think about my rating for a moment. I think Suzanne only had one scene in this episode, and I thought it was a really good one, with Piper towards the beginning of the episode, where she basically told her, listen, I don't even like you like that. You're not who I thought you were. I think it was good that Suzanne realized that, and that she felt strong enough to share that with Piper. Obviously, for story's sake, I think it's a good thing that this episode moved the story along with Piper and Alex. Now they're both on the same page, knowing that Alex named her, which only adds to our whole roller coaster with them and their relationship. I think it was really good storytelling the way they showed Fischer in the beginning of the episode trying to give Sister Ingalls a pass on her little contraband food, leading us all the way to the end of the episode being told by Caputo that she needs to step it up, which inevitably leads us to the interaction between her and Miss Claudette towards the end, which gets Miss Claudette sent to psych. So I thought that was really good storytelling in one episode that showed how that happened. Even though, again, it's really unfortunate that Miss Claudette got sent to Max. Spoiler alert, never to be seen again. I'm really disappointed that the show was not able to get Miss Claudette back at all when we finally get a closer look at Max in later seasons. I feel like they could have written her into a little scene somewhere. Like, even if it was just to see her in her cell in Florida or something. Anything. just to know that she's still okay. But anyways, with this being the goodbye episode for Miss Claudette, it just feels very gone too soon. That's all. While a very, very touchy subject, I really liked getting to see Tiffany's backstory. I really think that it helps us to understand who she is and how she came to be the woman that we see in the prison today. It all makes sense once we see her backstory, so I appreciate the writing and the acting on all of that because it helps us to get a little bit more understanding of Tiffany. The Daya, Bennett, Mendez love triangle also got moved forward in a very important way. That scene where Bennett realizes what Daya has done is the beginning of the end of them. And I think that was a really important moment for them to have. It totally foreshadows what's to come, but what's to come still blindsided me in real time. But we'll get there. I think it was interesting to see Janae and Yoga Jones paired up in this episode. That's a very unlikely pairing in my mind. But look, Janae was able to offer Yoga Jones some understanding that maybe she hasn't had before. So I'm glad that Janae was able to be there for her in that way. Also, I'm glad that we got to know a little bit more about Yoga Jones's backstory. Even though I think that she deserved her own backstory episode, I'm glad that at least we know what happened. Probably my favorite part of this episode, which is also probably my least favorite part of this episode, is the fact that Taystee came back. I love that Taystee came back because she's one of my favorite characters, and I love seeing her and Poussey together, and I love a lot of the stories that are coming up with Taystee being back. But also, I hate that she's back, like as a person. I understand that she's fictional, but things like this happen all the time. I appreciate the writers for having Taystee explain the way she did to Poussey the reason why she decided to come back to prison. I don't think that her story is an uncommon one, but it's a really, really sad one. So with that being said, I think I'm going to give this episode an 8.2. But that's just me. Don't forget to comment your favorite lines from the episode and let me know what your personal rating is for this week. Again, mine was an 8.2, but what do you think? I would love to hear yours. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the next episode we will be rewatching is season 1, episode 13, titled Can't Fix Crazy. Can you believe that we've made it to the end of season 1? As always, I would like to thank each and every one of you for hanging out with me in Yadda Space. As a gift, I am releasing both episodes 12 and 13 at the same time on Christmas Eve. So Merry Christmas, everyone, and Happy Holidays. The ladies are having a Litchfield Christmas in the next episode, so I felt it was only right. The IMDb synopsis for season 1, episode 13, titled Can't Fix Crazy, says, Alex makes a final decision about Piper, and Larry finally decides what will happen to Piper after meeting Alex for the first time. Red's plan to retrieve her kitchen goes awry. Piper is forced to stand up for another inmate. And the thing that they don't mention is that's the episode with the Christmas pageant, so that should bring some holiday fun. That episode is up next. I hope you guys enjoyed this special double episode week that I worked so hard to bring to you on time. Thanks for hanging with me in Yadda Space, and happy holidays to you and your families. Just so you know, I've been having such a good time chit-chatting with you guys about Orange is the New Black. Self-promotion does not come easy, but I know it's a must to keep the podcast going. Every time you guys listen to the podcast, you like a post, you comment, or you share a post on social media, you're helping this little podcast to grow, and I can't thank you enough for the love and support. If you've been hanging out in Yadda Space for a while now and you're enjoying the Back to Litchfield podcast, please consider leaving the podcast a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. Also, if you're able and want to go the extra mile, please consider checking out our Patreon. Joining the Prison Moms tier helps to literally keep the lights on for this little one-lady show, and it gives you early ad-free episodes, access to our exclusive Back to Litchfield chat right on Patreon, and honorary producer credits for the podcast. And be sure to follow us on your favorite social media apps. We are on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and now Blue Sky. Please follow those accounts for bonus content from the show, as well as updates about the podcast. And if ever you're searching for the pod, remember, it's just like the theme song says, Yadda Space with 2 E's. Thanks again for your continued support. It means so, so very much. I'll catch up with y'all next time here at Yadda Space.
Hey, welcome friends to Yadda Space. I'm Yadda here, let's set the pace. This is a rewatch podcast, so let's begin. new black is where we dive in. Taystee's wisdom sets the tone. Poussey's heart feels like home. Nikki's got that quick one fire. Morello's love of love lifts us higher.